Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Just as my friend Rob Don says, Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. There it is. Tonight's topic, Soulmate, part 2, with a little luck. And we'll get into that in just a second. But first, we'll say hello. I'm out of breath because I forgot a drink, and I rushed to the refrigerator to grab one before the time started. We like to try to.
That was pretty fast.
Yeah, it was pretty fast. I was impressed myself. All right. Welcome, everyone. We're going to say hello to the panel first, and then we'll get into saying hello to everyone in the chat, and then we'll get started. Okay, so let's hear from Jen first. Jen, take a minute to say hello to everyone, and if you have any opening comments for tonight's topic, go ahead and give them.
Yes. Hello, everybody. True Story Live family here on the panel and in chat. Love to be here tonight, guys. And just as a reminder, we are not medical professionals. Everything here said on the show is opinion-based only.
Oh, that's good.
FOYI. Good to see you guys. Glad to be here.
I like that. We can credit Marisa for that little announcement at the front. I'm not saying she's wrong. I mean, we just have conversations. We're not telling anyone that we're professionals of any kind, but I guess it's good to have the disclaimer out there. So there you go.
Yes. Yeah. Good thing is we don't need degrees to share our opinions about things that we've gone through, some things we haven't gone through.
That's the thing. There are people out there that don't want us to say anything about anything because we don't have degrees. I do actually have a degree. I just don't have a master's. So there we go. Let's hear from Marisa. Marisa, say hello, and if you have any opening comments for tonight's topic, please give them.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to True Story Live. Woo! We're going to have a great discussion tonight, part 2 of talking about soulmates, and I'm looking forward to get into that discussion. Thank you, everybody who's tuned in. Thanks to everybody who watches the replay. Please feel free to share it out on your social media if you're so inclined. And for during the broadcast, I'll be happy to share some links that relate to Crips and Starling Swallow, some of their alternate channels, and I will share a link or two of them collaborating with me on my channel as well. And if you're in blue, I'm sure that if you want to share your link, that Crips and Jen would be more than happy to let you do that.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, everybody, for being here. And I can't wait to get started.
All right. Thank you, Marisa. Appreciate that. Last but certainly not least, let's hear from Glenn, from our friend from Australia. Glenn, say hello. And if you have any opening comments for tonight's topic, please give them.
Hi. Yeah, right. That's it. Crips, you said you went to the fridge to get a drink. Are you on the terps already?
I don't know what that is.
The terps? What's that?
Terps. That means alcohol.
Oh, no.
Oh.
No, I'm so boring now. Now, if you would have asked me that 10, 15 years ago, you would have been right on top of it. But yeah, I don't drink so much anymore. It's sad, really. It's sad. I mean, not even like occasional social drink anymore, which is surprising given my history. But no, I drink Diet Sundrop, and a lot of people don't even know what that is, but it's a sugar-free soft drink that you get in this area. Very popular in this area, but only in this area. So Diet Soda, which I know
it's not spiked.
It's not spiked. No, just plain Diet Sundrop. So there you go. All right. Well, let's say hello to everyone in the chat before we get started. Jen, if you would take a minute to acknowledge everyone that's already here.
Absolutely. We've got Miss Neslova in the chat and on the panel. Rachel Menifee is here. Hey, Rachel. Nathan Gruber, our Kiwi friend. Glenn is here, and John Dons. And I think that's it so far. Oh, you're in here too, Crips.
Yeah.
Just so you know. Just in case you didn't know you were in the chat.
Well, sometimes I don't type in the chat, so you wouldn't know if I was here or not, if that was the indicator. All right, so we'll say hello to anyone new that comes in, but thank you everyone who is here. And lastly, tonight, my name for people that haven't heard the broadcast before, I go by Crips. My friends call me Crips, but Jace, Jason, Mr. Cripps, if you want, whatever. Mr. C. If I was a teacher, it'd be Mr. C probably.
Hey, you, that works sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I'm the host of the broadcast, and everyone that has said hello are part of the panel. I could not do this, would not do this without them. And I'm very grateful for each and every one of them. I'm grateful for you. If you're hearing the sound of my voice, thank you for taking the time to listen to the playback. And we will say hello to anyone new that comes in the chat as we can. Tonight's topic was edited by Glenn, but it was from a listener that will go unnamed and prefer to remain anonymous, which we respect. No problem there whatsoever. So this was submitted to us to read from one of you guys. So thank you for doing that. It starts with a quote: "No one loses anyone because no one owns anyone. That is the true experience of freedom, having the most important thing in the world without owning it." And of course, it's from our friend Paulo Coelho. The song of choice is "With a Little Luck" by Paul McCartney and Wings. The song is a wonderful artistic expression and composition that describes what a soulmate is. The link is in the description. Listener says, "I mean that lady in the article. She may have had that same connection with her husband, but became numb to it and forgot it really happened. Then this new dude came along and sparked or revived, and she had just forgotten her spark she had with her husband. I feel like we can connect in this way with more than one person. I feel like, in all truth, that any divine connection would always include God." Before we move on to the core of the show, listener adds, quote, "I don't think I believe in soulmates. I just feel numb inside about the whole thing. I feel that a spontaneous connection is possible. I feel that love is serene, tranquil. It isn't just some spontaneous feeling. Love comes from the understanding of another, somehow having inner revelation that you know this person, not by blind faith, but by a small seed of hope. Seems sublime. Thinking and journaling thoughts is a relevant part of a search for clarity of ideas and direction. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to, quote, just do it, end quote. And hopefully this will inspire others too. Consider this your personal invitation to do likewise." With this being said, let's get to the questions. Do feelings and intuition play a greater part than logic in soulmate connections? How do you know with surety the difference between love and limerence in a one-moment experience with another person? An epiphany? Is there something extra with a soulmate that you don't have in a standard relationship? If yes, please define extra. If you accept that the possibility of a spontaneous connection is real, is it relevant to try to discern that such connection is real? Or is it more a case of just going with it? In your opinion, if a connection breaks between declared soulmates, do you believe the connection was just an illusion? Can some soulmate connections be temporary, or is it OSAS? Once soulmates, always soulmates. Cripps, Glenn wrote this bit. To those who have experienced such connection, did it change your life in any way? To evoke questions, some extracts from above are restated. Listener says, "I mean that lady in the article. She may have had that same connection with her husband, but became numb to it and forgot it really happened. Then this new dude came along and sparked or revived, and she had just forgotten her spark she had with her husband." What do you think of this comment? Do you feel soulmate connections are open to being with more than one person? Listener also says, "I feel in all truth that any divine connection would always include God." Do you consider soulmate connections are exclusively divine connections, meaning that God always forms an integral part of such connections? Is God accommodated differently in soulmate relationships than other relationships? Now to the situation between a believer and a non-believer. Can these two people be authentic soulmates even though they don't live as partners in the world? To take this further, do believers consider a soulmate connection to be yoking? Finally, listener says, maybe it's unresolved conflict in my mind about interrelating with a few people in the past, and that is affecting my reaching a sober conclusion to the potential of it all. This concept of a soulmate. There we have it. As we have intimated so many times on TSL, the choice is either to be open to possibility or stay in the cupboard. And then finally, I'll quote, love is an art, an expression of the divine, to which Jesus is a clear image of. Unknown. Had that last comment. All right, so we definitely have one tonight that is question driven. And so we will get into that in just a minute. Let me check the chat and make sure no one new popped in that we can say hello to. Nope, not thus far. So we will, as said, we will make sure and say hello to anyone new that pops in. Okay, so let's get into the questions. There are plenty to answer here. So thinking and journaling thoughts is a relevant part of a search for clarity of ideas and direction. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to just do it, and hopefully this will inspire others to. Consider this your personal invitation to do likewise. With this being said, let's get to the questions. First question, do feelings and intuition play a greater part than logic in soulmate connections? Anyone have a so Jen went first, so she gets to go first on this. What do you say, Jen?
I can't speak for anybody else, but for me and you, when you and I met and connected and decided to take it to the next level, I would say all three played in there: feelings, intuition, and logic.
Sure.
But hypothetically, for other soulmates, I would hope, well, I was going to say I would hope there would be some logic in there, but I'm wondering if some people that have had a soulmate type of connection, I'm wondering if there didn't need to be any logic per se because the connection was there. You know what I mean?
I actually do. And when it becomes Glenn's turn, that'll explain that. It'll draw that out a little bit more, for sure.
So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay. Let's save Glenn for last. What do you say, Marisa?
You want to read it again?
Sure. Do feelings and intuition play a greater part than logic in soulmate connections? I think you're muted, Nez. There you go. Oh,
okay, there we go. Yeah, someone from. Certainly, I think when you meet somebody that is a soulmate, and when I say soulmate, I mean you have similarities with the way you're made is, and how things you want to accomplish, things you have dreams of doing. Can be certain gifts you have in common.
Right.
I think when you encounter another soul who is similar to you in that way, I think it's a big wave of feelings and emotions. And logically, I don't really see where logic comes into play, because you can have those people out there that are maybe a soulmate as far as being a friend or a lover that's really close to your spouse or whatever.
Sure.
But they can be very different from you in a lot of ways. And there are people that may have, that soulmate type connection on the inside, but on the outside they may be completely different people with different interests, whether it's religious or political affiliations or whatever. I mean, they say opposites attract. Sometimes I think that's very true. I really don't think that logic comes into play when you encounter somebody. of a similar soul. I think
All
I think
right.
it's just something that is, you feel the frequency and the vibration, you do or you don't. And I
Right.
don't think logic has a thing to do with it. Except logically, if you are like somebody and they are on a similar frequency with you, then it's logical that you would be attracted
Yeah.
to that person. I think
Yeah.
that's the only place I can fit logic in there.
Okay. Well, thank you,
Nice.
Marisa. I'll answer next, and then we'll hear from Glenn. So I agree with what both Jen and Marisa said. I don't think logic plays a part in certainly deciding whether someone is a soulmate or not. Now, I can see from the aspect or perspective of the world looking at your relationship with someone. You know, I mean, let's say you meet your quote unquote soulmate. You just know. You know, people talk about, oh, I just knew. I felt similar meeting Jen. You know, I just knew, but I had thought I just knew before my other marriage. I will say that this feels different to me. The thing with Jen, and it has proved to be true that it does feel different to me than than any other relationships, really. But the logic would enter in, you know, you just meet someone and then you're already getting together and you get married really quickly or you get engaged really quickly. And people on the outside would say, well, that's not logical. So I can see where people would put logic on any connection, whether it be soulmate connection or, you know, just romantic in some way, whether you call them soulmate or not. Logic enters into it from the outside, certainly. But I would agree with what Marisa said. Logic doesn't enter into it in general, especially for the two people that are in the relationship. They're not thinking about logic anyway. I'm not saying there isn't a single person that chooses to look at relationships in a logical manner. Just for me, my answer would be what Jen and Marisa, what their answer was, which Jen said feelings and intuition and logic play a part. Marisa said logic doesn't enter much into it, but Jen was saying that feelings and intuition are the greater part, more than logic, and I would agree with both of those. I don't think logic plays much of a part, though it may to some people. Best way I know how to describe that. Want to say hello, of course, to This Is Me, who popped in the chat not too long ago, and also to our friend Okie Grower 75. Welcome, Okie Grower. Glad you're here. Marisa, you want to say hello to your friend Okie? He's our friend now, too, though.
Hello, Okie. I love you. Hello to Rush. I love you. Thank you for coming.
Well, there you go. All right. All right, let's hear from Glenn. I always look forward to Glenn answering these questions. Now, he has already seen them as editing the write-up, of course, from our listener. So he knows what the questions are. So he has had plenty of time to come up with a way that he's going to answer. But having said that, do feelings and intuition play a greater part than logic in a soulmate connection?
I would say yes, but at the same time, I think there's some embedded logic in there as well.
Okay.
I can't say that I've sat across the room and seen someone there and said, "Oh, that's my soulmate." It's never happened to me. I can't know what that feels like. I've always had prior contact, and there's something in that prior contact that has set the bells ringing, so to speak. And within that scenario, there's always a bit of logic, I say. But I think the other part is greater. So I'm going to answer the specific question with a no. Hang on, do it. No, sorry, I take that again. The feelings, feelings and intuition do play a greater part,
Yeah.
but there's embedded logic in it for me.
Okay. Now, may I ask you, and you, obviously,
Certainly.
as always, feel free to, you know, say I'm not going to answer that. But would you consider so the two women I'm aware of that you've met? I mean, you've told me other stories, but the two women that I have met that I know that you have had a relationship with, my mom being one and Sandra being the other, would you consider both of those soulmates to you in a way, just from your perspective?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. And it's also been reflected in by reciprocation. In other words, I have, your mum has said it, so Sandra, that we're soulmates. So it's not just me saying it's just for the one person. As I said, it's reciprocated.
Right.
Which makes me feel not that it gives more credence to the situation, but it sort of says that, well, the other person is on a similar wavelength to what I'm on.
Right. Right. Now, with my mom, did you just know? When did you when did you discover it was a soulmate connection? And then I'll ask you the same question about Sandra.
Oh, geez, I don't know if I can say that.
Well, if you can't, you can't.
Okay, with your mum, I had 18 months prior communication with a person
Right.
in another country. With
Right.
Sandra, I had 3 emails and knew
Right.
it.
Right.
So the first one comes from a place of, you might say, lack of awareness, where you don't have that experience before.
Right.
So therefore, it's everything is new. So you don't tend to. I didn't even understand or even think. Well, I didn't even consider that you could have a soulmate. I didn't even know what that is or means.
Sure.
So therefore, it's outside my frame of reference at that point with your
Right.
mum. But when it came to Sandra, it was well within my frame of reference. So
Okay.
so much faster. Because I knew immediately because of the prior connection with your mum.
That makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're welcome to push to ask more if you want. I'm happy to share.
Yeah. So it sounds like to me you're saying that the relationship with my mother, it did stretch out over time, and then at some point you realized, even if you didn't understand the concept of soulmate per se, you did understand that it was a deeper connection that in some ways defied logic. I mean, that's I'm putting my own word into it, but it seems like it defied logic to me.
Could you just say that again, please?
Yeah, the relationship with my mom, I mean, it's across thousands of miles away. I mean, you guys met online. So someone from the outside who's trying to affix logic on you guys communicating in the way that you did and having such a strong connection, they would think it's illogical. You can't possibly have that kind of connection from thousands of miles away like that. And someone and essentially built mainly through email.
Yeah, but there's another side to that story. I'm prepared to share it, and I can imagine there's going to be a lot of people going to shake their head in disbelief, but I can guarantee you it's true.
Okay.
After my first marriage broke up, etc., I decided, look, I can't go out. I can't do anything because I've got Michael, my son, who has Asperger's, was with me, and I'm a sole parent. So it doesn't mean you can't gallivant around the countryside. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You're at home with your child because he's only young. So I decided, let's see what the internet got to offer.
Sure.
So I just went on there just out of curiosity. And don't forget, this is the day of 56K modems for those who are old enough to remember.
I've heard some stories on
my
about that. Yeah.
It's pretty distressing to your phone bill.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. She got in trouble on her end, Glenn, just so you know.
Oh, crikeys. You're just like horrendous, isn't it? When you're anyway, I had I'm pretty intuitive, and I had not a vision, but something came into my head, and it felt like, this is ridiculous. Anyway, I went and told my mum, and I said, "Hey, Mum, I'm going to go to America, and I'm going to meet a woman, and I don't know anything about it.
Right.
But all I know is she's got this short blonde hair. I've explained this to you before.
I love it.
She's got short blonde hair, and I know I'm going." And I said, I'm going to behave totally out of pattern to what you used to be doing. And you're going to be totally confused, but I need you to run with this sort of thing. I think I must have been going scratching her head. What on earth is he on?
Oh, my gosh.
You can imagine it.
I can, yeah.
Your son comes to you and tells you this sort of fairy story for someone who's only ever been to New Zealand or Tasmania or somewhere. Right. He's going to get on the plane and he's going to go to the USA.
Yeah.
So I connected with your mum on the internet, and the first question I asked her was, "What colour's your hair, and is it long or short?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, I'm blonde, but I've had long hair pretty much my whole life, but this week I got it cut short. Oh shit! I hit the floor. That was what drove me. That was the whole impetus of what just kept driving me to do this.
Yeah.
Just that one premonition, so to speak. So you can say it's as crazy as one thing, but look, if you trust it, you go with it.
Yeah.
Mate.
Wow.
I appreciate
it.
It sounds weird. It sounds ridiculous. I know, but it's absolutely true.
Well, it's beautiful. It might sound ridiculous to someone that doesn't know either of you, but to me, who has known both of you, it's a beautiful story. It's not a Hollywood ending, happy Hollywood ending in some ways, but there's no denying the connection the two of you had, and it transcends logic, in my opinion.
Probably, but the soulmate connection never died.
Right.
That's the other thing. It although it didn't end up in a personal in-life situation, it never diminished.
And that's so saying, sorry.
It was always there, and it's extremely difficult to deal with.
Yeah. Wow.
Like I said last week, there's a lot of stuff emotional stuff and that goes on inside that it's difficult trying to rationalize this kind of, when you have this kind of connection and you're pulled away, it's really difficult.
I can imagine that. So the soulmate connection it is unlike any other connection, and it can seem to transcend logic in my perspective, but to the people in it just seems right. It just seems like that's the way it should be, and I think that's beautiful. So to finish out questioning you, Glenn, so with Sandra, and you've told me this before, but maybe the listeners would be interested in knowing how different that connection was. And I would even say, and you can agree or disagree, that the relationship with my mom put you in a different place when you met Sandra. So you didn't have to spend 18 months or whatever it was to get to know her. You came there, as you say, much quicker. So do you want to talk a little bit about how that relationship felt to you? You said a number of emails happened, and then if you don't mind, tell everyone how that felt.
Sure. Okay, well, I'll preface that by saying if your mum was never in the picture, there was never going to be a Sandra. It was not going to be possible, because the gifts that she gave me were so profound that I was able to take forward. Well, I could never repay that gratitude that I've always felt for that. I think I've said that before.
Right.
Okay, so with Sandra, it's just a case of, I thought I'll try online dating again, back up for another go. Yeah. And the first night I went on, I put in at this stage I'm only mid-40s. I'm not like I am now, old. So I just tried in 40 to 50 range, and I thought, ladies, and geez, everyone seems so vain. Like, it's like a meat market. I thought, give me someone with a brain, please.
Yeah.
So then I thought, I'm not going to go younger, so I went higher. I added another 5 years on. I went to 55, and there was Sandra. Yeah. So I just sent her an email, and she sent me one, and we did, I think, 2 or 3 each, and then said, okay, well, we should meet. And we met, basically. I will say it was a foregone conclusion. I already told people before I met her, straight up. I knew.
Yeah.
So, and she knew too, because she actually got her son to drive her to the meeting, so I had to take her home. And she only told me that later. See, I was too dumb. I didn't know. I didn't even see. She set me up.
She sure did. She knew what she was doing.
She said, take me home, or whatever. Oh, you want to come home? Oh, well, if you do, you'll have to take me home.
Oh, my gosh. That's great.
She got one over on me real well. I'll give her that.
Well,
that's it. So the two soulmates are still together, and as good as they ever were.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way it happened is different, but certainly those two people, those two women, have a soulmate connection with you that doesn't die.
Absolutely not.
Right.
But it was different. Sandra was the connection with Sandra was just like a very knowing, like I use the word holistic for want of a better term. It's just like, oh, I've been with this woman my whole life sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, it's that very chilled out. Oh, it's just like a breeze, it's just, everything is just so easy.
Yep.
And Sandra's friends used to say, oh, she eats men up. They tell me she's just too strong for most guys. And here's me thinking, oh, this woman's absolutely wonderful. because she's assertive. She says what she thinks.
Yeah.
She's got all those qualities. She's independent. She doesn't need me. She's not going to do codependent stuff.
Right.
She's going to stand for herself.
Well, that's a bonus to not deal with the codependency stuff.
Yeah, so.
For sure.
So we still actually like each other. So I can't complain. That's for sure.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Glenn, for giving me the time and answering the questions. I appreciate that. I'm sure the listeners appreciate that too. Want to say hello to John B, who popped in the chat. Hello, John. John is a friend of the channel for a long time. He kind of comes in and out, which we appreciate. You can come as often as you want. You want to take a break and not come for a while. Of course, we miss you, but you're welcome anytime. So thank you, John B, for popping into the chat. And I hope everyone makes John feel welcome. Of course, he's been welcome here, as everyone is. But say hello to John if you haven't already. I think I said this is me, didn't I? Didn't I say hello to her?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure. Okay, great. All right. Next question is a good one. We're going to start with Jen again because this is her word that she brought up last week. So just be prepared, Jen. How do you know with surety the difference between love and limerence in a one moment experience with another person? And then the listener asks, can it be an epiphany or an epiphany? How do you know the difference between love and limerence, Jen? What do you think?
I think if it's in a one moment experience, I don't know exactly how long they're talking here.
Okay.
It's a glance across the room or what. But I would say I feel like there would have to be some exchanging of information within that moment. Sure. But I can't put it past, I've heard stories where people just looked at each other and knew, and I can't say that that's not real. You know what I mean? It could be fake, what they're saying, the story they're sharing, but who am I to say? I'm not them,
Right, right.
So, I would say that, surety.
That's a eternal quantifier.
Yeah.
In a way, surety. How are you absolutely sure?
Yeah.
The difference between love and limerence.
Yeah, because with limerence, it's all in your head.
Right.
So that's why I was saying there would have to be some information exchanged, because the thing of it is, like, someone could fake it. They could be listening to everything you say and mirroring it right back to you. And so, yes, there's information being exchanged, but on one person's part, it's not actually fact or true.
Right.
So you could think it's a connection when it's not.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm still on the fence about the whole soulmates thing. Like, the reason I'm stuck on it is because of you and I. It just was and has been such an incredible experience, something that's very, very difficult to put into words.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe. And I will say the surety that I have felt, I've never felt more sure about anything other than salvation.
Right.
And that's another thing that's very hard to describe. If you try to describe it to somebody, they might think you're a loon. Just like with Glenn and his what he didn't call it an epiphany. What did he call it? What was the word you used, Glenn? A premonition.
Premonition.
Yeah, start with a P.
Right.
So, yeah, if you're comparing it to limerence is definitely something that one person on one end is assuming that the other person feels the same way or is having that same experience, whether it's, spiritual, emotional, physical, all those things mixed up into one. So that's a really good question. An epiphany, I guess. Yeah, a connection. It could be an epiphany as well.
Sure.
Where you just know. I wonder what their definition of epiphany is.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Would they connect it to the word surety that they used? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, thank you, Jen. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not an easy. It is a good question. It's not an easy question. Let's see what Marisa has to say. How do you know with surety the difference between love and limerence in a one-moment experience with another person? Can it be an epiphany? Is that a reason, Marisa? What do you say?
I say that just because you feel an attraction for somebody and whether or not they feel that back for you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're soulmates. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's love. You might just like what you see and enjoy whatever you're enjoying about that person, and
Right,
same on the other side. And I
right.
think not exploring and taking the time to discern what that is it's gotten me in trouble. I can raise my hand there and say that. Yeah,
Same.
how much time do we have?
Oh, Marisa.
Sometimes we're just dealing with good old fashioned lust.
Yeah,
Lust can make you feel all ooh and tingly and all the things that feel real similar to the good
Yeah.
experience when you meet somebody
right.
where there's love and you have a soulmate connection. So it's really a sketchy ground. You really need to be on your game. You really need, especially as believers, you need to be praying. You need to be asking God for discernment to find out what's
Yeah.
going on. Just because you're feeling all oogie doogie and iggly tiggly and all the warm fuzzies, that is not your straight all up definitive answer as to what in the hell's going on.
That's
So
true.
I think, and there's nothing you can do but take the time to explore it and try to discern what's going on. As
Yeah,
far the scenario that I don't know much about that we read about in the article, just playing armchair analyst, it sounds like it was probably more of a lust thing. And
right.
since she was in unhappy where she was at, when you're unhappy, personally speaking, you're going to reach for any life preserver thrown your way or whatever you perceive to be a life preserver.
Right.
That's a good point.
So,
Gotcha.
I don't know. None of us really know. But if I had to make a guess, I would say that's probably more what was going on. I don't think soulmates were ever even an issue in that scenario, particularly. I think it
Right.
was an unhappy person reaching out, and the other person, whatever their motives, obviously did not feel the same way enough to reciprocate and continue a relationship. So you got to be
Okay.
careful. You got to be
You
careful.
do.
Yeah.
You do. Thank you, Marisa. Appreciate that. I want to say hello real quick to Conspiracy Realist Mom. Welcome back. We're glad that you're here. Everyone make
Oh,
them,
hi, conspiracy realist. That's one of my peeps. Woo!
yeah, everyone make them feel welcome, please, in the chat if you haven't already. Thank you guys for doing that. This is such a welcoming chat. I appreciate you guys so much.
Yes, same.
Okay, so Marisa and Jen both answered. So let's hear from Glenn. I'll go last on this one. I just want to say just really quickly, I think that this limerence thing, it can be two people having limerence. They see each other,
Ah.
and I can imagine for me when I see limerence, that's chemicals to me. It can be more than just chemicals. I think you can have chemicals with someone, and it ends up being a soulmate connection. But how do you know with surety at the beginning that it is? I don't know. But it definitely people experience the chemicals, and that can be limerence, or it can lead up to limerence, or it can lead up to something more. But I'll fill that in a little bit more. What do you say, Glenn? How do you know with surety the difference between love and limerence in a one moment experience with another person? Can it be an epiphany? What do you say?
I say you can't know about pretty much anything in life with surety,
Yes.
and certainly not in this case.
Right.
I think you can have an epiphany, but from my point of view, I'm probably different from most people. Is that and limerence is before I said limerence is a word I don't like at all. It's just something about it that annoys the crap out of me. But I will say that if I'm not emotionally bonded with someone, I would not be doing limerence. I'd say, or lust, or whatever you want to call it. Lust comes from me after you're bonded, not before.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Well, surely you're aware that that doesn't happen that way with most people. But you're saying for you,
I said I'm different than a lot of
yeah.
people.
No, I know. I'm filling in a little bit. So you're aware that in society, very much lust plays a part in whether they're with someone. I agree with you. I would have to have a deeper connection than just the lust part, but that's a choice that a person makes, I think. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. Like, I
Okay.
mean, like Sandra and I have totally different backgrounds in this situation. Whereas, like I said, I need to be bonded with someone before I'll feel that way. Whereas didn't come from that side at all, and she went the other route, and we both ended up together from a totally different, what you might say, set of experiences. But once we got together, it was all about the bonding.
Yeah.
That's it. Then that's what really finds you out, I think, when you get bonded. Everything, all that other stuff, that last stuff in advance, to my mind, that's just a waste of energy.
Yeah.
Forget about it. So,
Okay.
yeah, epiphany, yes, I think you can.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that.
Sure.
I agree with what Glenn said. The idea I mentioned being eternal quantifier, surety, and I know that there's a lot of people that will say like about salvation, I'm sure I'm saved, and I don't disagree with you. You're sure that you're saved. I'm sure that I'm saved. But with anything, I'm careful not to have an eternal quantifier to say, I know for sure about most things. I don't. I could say, my relationship with Jen, I'm as sure as I can humanly be, as humanly possible, sure that what I have with her is real, and that she's not going to, by choice, leave me. And I feel that way about her. I'm as sure about that as I am about anything. I don't think there's too many things that you can be 100% sure of. I just don't see how that's possible. Even things that you see with your own eyes. I mean, there are things that play tricks on your eyes, and you see it, and you think, "Oh, well, that for sure is an oasis in the middle of the desert." Well, they've got a name for that, Well, it's a mirage. It's not real. You get there, and it's not there. So you were sure 10 minutes ago, 15, whatever time frame you want to say, that you're seeing something that is real, and you get there and it's not there. I mean, how many times that happened to us, where where you say, "I'm sure about this," and then it ends up being that you weren't sure, or it's an illusion of some sort. So you have to be careful with surety, but I'm going to try to answer the question in the way that it was phrased. How do you know with surety the difference between love and limerence and one moment experience with another person? I agree with Glenn. I don't think you can know in one moment. Anything is sure. Now, my relationship with Jen has been drawn out over time, and I did feel sure at the beginning, and then time bore that out. And every day waking up to her, and she's consistent. She says that about me to other people, which is wonderful to hear, that I'm a consistent person in our relationship. And I try to be consistent. I want to be consistent, but for me, it's not even trying. Now, that hasn't always been the case with other people I've been in relationships with. There have been relationships I've been in, and they're not all romantic, but just in general, that I've had to work really hard at the relationship. I had to be real cognizant of what I was saying and doing. With Jen, I don't have to do that. But in my opinion, it's a rare relationship. And whether you affix the word soulmate on it or not, I'm pretty sure about the dynamics that are in our relationship, and I'm pretty sure that they're solid. And when life throws things at us, financial struggles or whatever life can throw at us, I feel like nothing's going to break our relationship up. In my relationship with God, I feel, obviously it's a little bit different than a human relationship, but I feel as sure as I can be that God exists. And it may seem crazy to people on the outside, but can I be 100% sure of anything? No. There are things I won't know until I experience it. So that's open for debate. But on this one, I don't think it's possible. to be sure, especially in a one moment, as the listener describes, one moment experience with another person. And lastly, I'll say epiphanies are great, and they can give you a nice little jolt, chemical wise, or in your mind. You come up with an idea, something you've been thinking about for a long time, but it's still not surety, in my opinion. So it's a great question. Let me check the chat, see if anyone new popped in. No, I don't see anyone. Okay. Moving on to the next question. We got a lot of questions to get through. We're spending a lot of time on these, but they're really good questions, so they deserve the time. Is there something extra with a soulmate that you don't have in a standard relationship? If yes, please define extra. Is there something extra with a soulmate that you don't have in a standard relationship? If yes, please define extra. We'll go in backwards order this time. Glenn, if you're ready, could you answer this one for us? If there's something extra in a soulmate connection, what is that extra? And do you think that's possible?
I think it's very possible, but I think it's extremely difficult to quantify.
Right.
It's more a part of just knowing, essentially. Right. Does it feel different?
Yeah.
It does. I would say it feels different. Oh, geez, articulating it.
Yeah.
There's just like there's another layer that's stuck over the top of the other relationship. So
yeah.
It's very inarticulate, I know, but
no, I mean that's good. That's good. To use video game terms, it's a level up. If you're for those that play the video games, your character generally starts out pretty basic. And as you go through, you build things, and when you level up, that's what a soulmate connection is to me over other relationships.
It feels like there's a greater degree of understanding, or awareness, of who the other person and what the other person is. Whereas I think now whether that is intrinsic and just automatic, or whether that's something that you sort of, once you feel this connection, you really do set about to discover a lot more, because it's so easy to do so. It's what I mean? It doesn't feel effortful. It feels like, but you actually, if you sit back and reflect, you're actually putting a huge investment into this.
Sure.
Because because it's like a quest for understanding and knowledge.
Yeah.
And a willingness to do it. Whereas a lot of people, like you meet them down the street, you say, "How are you?" "Oh, yeah, I'm good," and you move on. There's no impetus there to take things further.
Yeah, sure. I've been in relationships like that, like my first marriage. That describes that pretty well. There I hate to say it, but there were certain things, especially at the beginning, that I chased. I chased a deeper relationship, but at some point I realized that it wasn't going to happen. So I just had what I consider a baseline relationship. Where with Jen, the way you're describing it, Glenn, is there's a lot to pursuing the relationship, always looking for deeper and deeper, and always getting it. That's the way I see it, and it's effortless, as I was saying. Where with other relationships, you wouldn't even bother to go further. That's what I got out of what you're saying. Is that close?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Glenn. Let's see. Jen, you answered. Did you answer this one? No. What do you say, Jen? Is there something extra with the soulmate that you don't have in a standard relationship? If yes, please define extra. Jen?
Am I there?
Yeah, you're here. There you go.
Sorry. I was
That's
having
okay.
some issues. I turned the Wi-Fi off and it did something weird.
You got it.
Yeah, I would say that there's definitely something extra. It's so hard to describe.
It is hard.
It's like a knowing, but on a different level than what I had experienced before, and feeling like there was a knowing, if that makes any sense. I think part of it is acceptance.
Yeah.
there's this like unconditional acceptance of each other.
Yeah.
And there's like this knowing that's on a completely different level than I've ever experienced.
Uh-huh.
And the rest of it is really difficult to describe.
Sure.
It's I wish I could. I really wish I could go into detail on describing it, but it's just very difficult.
Okay.
If
It
I
is.
think of another way to, I'll butt in.
Well, cut yourself a little bit of a break here. It is difficult to define. I mean, if it's difficult for Glenn, I mean, surely, if he's having a hard time quantifying it, then everyone else can just take a breath on this one. Yeah, it's
Gosh.
difficult. It's difficult. But you're saying that there is a difference for you between a soulmate connection and as the listener states, standard, put in
Yeah.
parentheses.
Yeah, and it is
Yeah.
effortless,
Yeah.
which is very weird in a way. I mean, it's delightfully weird, but it's also there's times where I've been suspicious of it. Why is this
Especially
so?
at the beginning. Remember what you said to me in the beginning?
Yeah, there was many times I asked you if you were real.
Am I real?
Are you real?
I'm
Like this is just weird.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always
I
my
think
answer.
so.
How else can you answer
Pinch
that?
me. Yeah, right.
Pinch me.
It's crazy.
I'm as real. Let me say this. I'm as real now as I've ever been. I mean, I'm the Velveteen Rabbit of real. You know, I'm real to myself in ways because of growth and healing and change and being in a relationship where the other person accepts me completely for who I am. I've never experienced that before. She's not trying to change me. She's not trying to tell me how she thinks I should be. And she gets the same treatment. I want her to be who she is, who she wants to be, not who I want her to be. And I learned that from my other relationship because, as I've stated in my first marriage, I very much was in love with the potential of the person, and I'm just as guilty of allowing that to happen in the first place, signing on the dotted line for that. So I hold my hand up and say I'm guilty of loving a person for who they could be and not for who they actually are. So because of that, though, when I got into this relationship, I was bound and determined to love Jen for who she was at the time of meeting, knowing that she may never change a bit. Could I love a person who doesn't change? And my answer then was yes. But the great gift that she has given to herself and to me by proxy in a marriage relationship is that she is changing. And some people, as we've discussed on this broadcast, some people say in relationships, well, he's just not the man I used to. You're not the man I married. You're not the woman I married.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't be. So there seems in society to be this expectation that the person you marry is exactly the same person they're going to be 10, 20 years from then. And usually that's in a negative connotation. They're thinking about when the chemicals were high and they met this person and that person bent over backwards to court them. And then they get married and real life happens. And they're not bringing me flowers anymore. They're not bringing me candy. They're not pulling up with the limo out in the front, to take you to prom. These things are different now than they were, babies and jobs and taxes and all the stresses of life. But they're looking back to when they met and they want things to be that way. I don't have that expectation. I know that life changes. I know that things come up. And so those things on the outside, those external things, has nothing to do with my relationship at all. It's about whether they grow and change, whether I grow and change, and accepting that. And to me, there's a huge difference between that with a soulmate. And again, I'm just using the word because that's what the topic is. I'm not saying, just like Jen was saying, you're still on the fence about the idea of soulmate. So am I. We're just discussing it. I'm not saying there's any such thing as soulmate, but I do know that in the idea of soulmate, if we're affixing that to the relationships that we're describing, in this one, there is definitely an extra something over standard relationships that differentiates this relationship from other ones that I've had.
There you go.
All right.
That was well said.
Thank you. Well, you did good too. It's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah.
What do you say, Marisa? Is there something extra with a soulmate that you don't have in a standard relationship? If yes, please define extra.
I'll use my relationship with my best friend Bobby that you know from my channel and coming here. We've known each
Bobby.
other for over 40 years. Yes, Bobby. And even though our differences are very, very different, underneath it all, there's a similarity, a sense of humor, certain things we enjoy, certain gifts and talents that we have. And just being with her, when you're with somebody like that, you don't have to be up each other's butt every moment. You know what's going on with the other person somehow. In my experience, communication flows pretty well. You can finish each other's sentences sometimes if it's like that.
Yeah.
That's just I'm just talking about my experience
Yeah,
with Bobby.
of course.
And the passage of time, we've seen each other through everything. Marriages, divorces, births, deaths, many life changes. But it still feels like that's the person I knew when we were 7 and 8 years old.
Right.
Oh, wow.
I still know that's her. I know that's not an AI. I know it's not. She hasn't been cloned. I wouldn't believe that. I still feel the same vibration from her that I always did. And it's comforting. It's hard to maintain and keep relationships with people as you get older. People move, die, whatever.
Yeah.
And with family and everybody else. But there's a certain comfort and familiarity with my experience with her. I asked her last week. I said, Bobby, do you consider us soulmates? And she said yes with an exclamation point. And I said, that's good. So do I. So
Nice.
it's comforting. When I went through some rough times in my life, she's the one who helped me above and beyond everybody else who was around to do that if they so wanted to.
That's awesome.
Just beautiful. I have yet to meet the man who comes close to being as feeling that way, that sense of comfort and familiarity, and have the dependability, reliability, someone who understands things that normal people wouldn't.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I've had kids by 2 different men, and God bless them. But no, they couldn't. They don't even come close to the kind of closeness I have with Bobby. And it's not a sexual thing. It's never anything like that. It's just a again, I'll say familiarity, that comfort, that
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
you already know.
Connection.
We could be locked in a room for 24 hours and not talk, but we would still communicate effectively.
Love that.
I
Yeah.
guarantee it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there. I'm sorry I'm blabbing on and on, but
No,
that's
it's
just
good.
No,
my
you're fine. You're
experience.
fine.
You guys have all these romantic stories about this and that, and sorry, I don't. My
No-
would have to be Bobby.
No
So,
need to-
No.
No need to be sorry. In fact, I believe it was "This Is Me" said in the chat earlier, and I didn't put it up on the screen, but it does apply here. "This Is Me" is saying that that they don't affix a romantic relationship to the idea of soulmate, and I agree with that. And so we have a tendency to talk about the romantic relationships that we're in, Glenn and Sandra, and Glenn and my mom, and Jen and myself, and how that compares to other relationships we've been in and stuff. But no, the soulmate, as I understand it, the idea of a soulmate, as we were discussing last week, we were talking about Cloud Atlas, and I was describing that these people kept meeting each other, and they were different bodies and different names and all that. They weren't all romantic relationships. They kept running into the same people. And the movie, I believe, was saying that we're connected to certain people regardless, and they're not all soulmates. We might be romantically entangled with one character in one life and then another in another life, but all these people are soulmates. It's not all romantic relationships. It can be a friend.
It's not, and that's why I wanted to bring up my example, because as wonderful it is that you guys had romantic soulmate experiences, that's not all there is. And
Exactly.
Right.
And those relationships are just as profound and important,
Life-changing.
and life-changing and life-affirming.
Yes.
When I think of the times that I got bumped around on the road of life, she was there, and she was there without question, without reservation, the way you wish anybody that you love and you want to be there for you would act.
Yeah.
So if there was a soulmate best friend award, Bobby deserves it. I don't. She does. If I may,
Step up your game, Marisa. Come on.
I didn't mean to interrupt you before Crips. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to add that. Awakening Soldier, thank you for coming by, and thank you for joining the chat, and thank you so much to Wisconsin Greg for coming in. Another awesomeness. Thank you so much. I'll behave myself and.
Oh, you're fine. Also, Debbie S. also popped in. So we have a couple of Nez peeps that came in that are also, just so everyone knows, however you came in, you're friends of ours as well. So
yeah, we're glad you guys came.
So that means Debbie S. is also your friend, Nez. So she popped in as well. So hello to Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
Yep.
Debbie.
Okay, everyone answered this one. We'll try to move on. I want to get to all the questions here, so we have an hour to do that. So, next question: if you accept that the possibility of a spontaneous connection is real, is it relevant to try to discern that such connection is real, or is it more a case of just going with it? Okay.
Could you read that one more time?
I'm going to read it one more time. Absolutely. So the first part, we'll take it in parts. The first part is if you accept that the possibility of spontaneous connection is real. So we're assuming in answering this question that spontaneous connection is a real possibility.
Okay.
Second part, is it relevant to try to discern that such connection is real, or is it more just a case of going with it? So in spontaneous connection, are you able to discern that such a connection is real, or is it just going with it? That's the question part. I'll go first. Okay, so for the first part, yes, for the sake of the question, I'm saying that spontaneous connection is real. In other words, it hasn't built over time. It's just something that comes up, but we're not trying to find each other. And that's definitely the case for Jen and myself. Neither one of us were looking for another relationship at the time. So it was indeed a spontaneous connection. Started out as a friendship, became something more. But initially, it was just someone I recognized from across a crowded digital room, and I noticed her. And through a series of different things, it became something it became a friendship, and then developed out of that. So the second part, is it relevant to try to discern that such a connection is real, or is it more a case of just going with it? For me, it was possible to discern that it was relevant to me to discern that it was the connection was real for me. It was real for me, even just as a friendship. So just like Marisa just pointed out, it doesn't have to be romantic. So as a friendship, I believed our friendship was real. I believed that she was an authentic person. She wasn't putting on airs. How did I know that? I couldn't know that. But this is asking how it feels. How do you discern? It was not a case of just going with it. I'm not a just go with it type of person. I mean, that doesn't mean that there aren't certain things in life that I have to just go with it. I'm choosing not to make a big deal out of some things. So, as John Candy said in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, like a branch on the shoulders of a mighty stream. You're just going with it. And there are some cases that I do that. But in general, I'm not a person to just go with it, especially in relationships. I don't have other than on social media, I don't have a lot of people that I consider friends that it's not a real connection of some sort. So for other people, it might be different. They might just go with it. But for me, that it has to be a real connection. Otherwise, as Glenn said, you're not going to put the time into it. At least I'm not.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and answer and say I
All right.
completely agree.
Okay. Anything
That's
else?
it.
That's
Nope.
it. Okay. All right.
You just said it so well. I was
Okay.
like,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. What do you say? Let's go with Glenn next on this. And what do you say, Glenn? If you can understand the question, I'm happy to read it again. It's just the way it's worded. It's I feel like I understand it.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I would say this is the thing. Each person can only come from their own frame of reference and experience. You really
Right.
can't speculate. Except, so I'll say from experience, when I reflect, yeah, I would say that it's go with it. The is it real is just it just feels right, and then you go with it, and let it go to where it's going to go. So I'm not really looking. Because the word here is spontaneous. We're not
Right.
thinking of 18 months or a year or 6 months of communication. We're thinking you get in the room with someone and you have a chat maybe, and then you get a decision.
Right.
Are you feeling bonded with that person?
Yeah.
And are you going to be saying, okay, well, if that person says, well, you want to take me home or whatever, are you going to say, well, do I need to know whether it's real, or am I going to go with it? Well, I'm saying
Yeah.
I can't think of many cases where I would have said I'm not going with it.
Right. Right. And that's okay. As you know, we're different people and we can answer differently. And for you, you're just you're the go with it type, where I'm saying that I probably wouldn't do that. I'm not saying there's not a version of myself in the multiverse somewhere that would go with it, but just as far as I'm aware, I'm the only one, the only me that exists. So for me, I might pass. And in fact, the sad part is, because of that, I might pass up something great because I'm not willing to go with it because I don't know that it's real. To me, it could be an illusion and I'm setting myself up for something. But for you, you wouldn't miss that opportunity because you're willing to go with it.
It's not miss the opportunity. It's just that it feels okay to do so. If it didn't, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
There's got to be something intrinsic that I'm not going to override my gut feel just for the sake of going with it. Put it that way. There's got to be a line.
Okay.
So when I was Sonia and I had this chat not that long ago, and I said, when I look back, I took quite a few risks, but I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
It was because it comes down to trust. You're trusting the other person is going to have as much integrity as you have, and if you've made a good call, you won't get into trouble. Well, touch wood, I've never got into trouble. So the calls have been good calls.
Right.
But I understand that in other circumstances they not, for other people may have, and no doubt had experiences where they were not good calls at all.
Right.
I've been fortunate.
One thing I was going to add to that is I'm sure maybe sometimes people had a real soulmate type connection with someone, and because their logic ended up overriding the intuition of the connection. So
Sure. Yeah, I'm not saying that not going with it is a good thing. I'm just trying, from my perspective, answering honestly and putting myself in that situation. Um, yeah. So thank you, Glenn. I think you explained it well, and I appreciate that. I think Maurice's last on this one. If you accept the possibility of a spontaneous connection is real, is it relevant to try to discern that such connection is real, or is it more a case of just going with it? What do you say, Marisa?
I agree that you've got to live life and you can't hide from everything. Glenn tells you to just go out there and live it and take your chances and take them as they come.
Yeah.
But you have to pepper in discernment. You can't just go out there and accept everything. And in my experience, you've got to be very, very careful going with it. If you float down a raging river, you can run into rocks, you can run into trees, you can run into creatures.
Right.
Just floating down the water as it flows isn't always calm and peaceful. And you could go over a waterfall, for crying out loud. I mean,
right.
Going with the water is great, but there's other dangers there around sometimes too.
That's right. That branch.
So willing to live your life, but be willing to do it with your eyes open. Be willing to question and take the time to discern. And if you're a believer in Jesus, please pray. Please ask for wisdom, because the best looking, seemingly most wonderful thing to walk into your life might not be what you think they are.
Yeah.
And I'm preaching to you right now because I've been there.
Yeah.
So please be careful. I don't care where you're tingling, inside or outside. Please take the time to look into it, because we can all be deceived. There's no shame in being deceived. There's shame when you don't want to do anything about it.
Right.
And you'd rather live in deception than to face up to reality beyond the deception. So, that's my experience anyway. So,
okay. Well, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Marisa. Appreciate it.
Good stuff, Marisa.
All right. Moving forward, in your opinion, if a connection breaks between declared soulmates, so in other words, a relationship with two declared soulmates, do you believe the connection was just an illusion? So when it fails, if you say, "Oh, this is my soulmate," they say to you, "You're my soulmate," and it fails, do you believe the connection was just an illusion?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? So it may not have been an illusion if it fails, you're saying?
I think it's possible for two people to be soulmates and walk away from each other and it not be because they aren't.
Oh, well, bam. Well, all the answers are closed, folks. That's the answer.
I know. Feel free to disagree. I just, at the moment, I'm like, I don't, and if someone was being deceitful and you thought they were your soulmate, but they were putting forth a fake persona, that I'd say then no. But if there was a true connection. I mean, perfect example, your mom and Glenn.
Right.
I mean, I think, I don't know if you would agree or not, Glenn, but I think it's because of you that I'm thinking, wow, maybe there's more than one soulmate for one person. Because I don't think it was an accident that you and Linda were together for the time that you were, and I don't think it's an accident that you and Sandra are together.
But Linda and I have never been apart.
That's you and Linda? See?
No. We're still together.
Yeah. Still connected.
Absolutely. Well, certainly from my part.
And because it didn't work out.
But it did work. See, this is the mindset of people. It did work out.
Got it.
You get it.
Yep. I got it.
It's not always about the Hollywood ending in the sense that people perceive the Hollywood ending. There's still a beauty in all of this that transcends so-called happy endings.
Yeah.
It's not always meant for this way.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's still beautiful.
Right.
It is.
I agree. It's beautiful, even knowing how it turned out. It doesn't mean that it wasn't a beautiful thing. Whatever it was, it may not, as Glenn says, it may not be a typical Hollywood ending, as I mentioned earlier, but it's still beautiful. It's still a beautiful story. And it's still ongoing. You know, Glenn's talking about he's still connected with my mother. To me, that's not weird at all. And it's because of my understanding of those types of connections that it's not weird. And also, even my understanding of time. I may be wrong about the way that I see time, but I see that this particular life is only a portion of what it really is. And I'm not preaching to anyone about, you know, God and all of that, but honestly, my idea of this particular experience that we're having on this, whatever shape you think it is, whatever shape I think it is, this realm that we live in, it doesn't end with a death here. I believe that we will see people that we love again, people that we were connected to. I believe we'll see them again. And I could end up being wrong. I'm as sure as I can be about that based on the evidence and the information that I have seen. But certainly you can't say that it wasn't a soulmate connection. And if it fails, like Jen said, I think she answered it perfectly. Doesn't mean the connection wasn't real. There could be many other factors that break two soulmates up. And if it's
What
not,
if it freaked somebody out, you know, and they ran away? Like, this is too connected.
well, that's what I was. I have shared with you that I was afraid of that with you. I was afraid that when you have had nothing real, none of the relationships you've been in, or very few of them, have been real. When you finally encounter one that is real, does it have the potential to freak you out and make you run away? I think it does. So anybody can walk away from something. It could scare them how real it is. Excuse me. It's a great question, but I would agree with Jen and say it doesn't mean it's not real. Hold on one second. Something caught in my throat there. Okay.
Need a cough drop?
I have one in my pocket. Good idea.
Oh, rather.
Okay. So I forgot who answered this one. We just started. So Jen answered. I answered. Marisa, you answered?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Glenn, what do you say? If a connection breaks between two declared soulmates, do you believe the connection was just an illusion?
I do believe it was an illusion.
Oh.
Yeah. Taking the other side here, I think if you are connected in this way authentically, you can try to break it, but it won't break. No, I don't think so. So I think it wasn't real.
Okay.
It's like being authentic. If two people come into a relationship and say we are absolutely 100% authentic, and it goes belly up, I just always look at it the way Sandra did. Well, one of you or both of you were not authentic in the first place.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting. Anyone want to comment on Glenn's comment? Is that possible?
I had mentioned in the chat, because if it was real, it wouldn't have broken in the first place.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where you're going, Glenn?
I think it can, like I've said to This Is Me, we've had a bit of a chat about some of these things. I said, well, I think soulmate relationships can be tested through, and when things get tough, but somehow it never breaks.
Yeah.
Always tend on coming back together.
Right.
I can't see any other way. I just don't see that they can break.
Right.
Yeah.
I think something indefinable in those type of relationships that just have you so intrinsically bonded that no matter how hard you try or what happens, you come home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I like it. Yeah. So it's something I hadn't thought of, but what if two people are in a soulmate connection and they, I think Glenn was just saying they break apart for a while, but what's to keep them from coming back together later? So while the two people live, we don't know that the story ends there. They could come back together at another time. So they might walk away from each other for a period of time, but who says the story's over? And then,
I think if they find it's extremely difficult, because on the one hand there's a pull in one direction, but there's also the pull of togetherness, and it can be conflicting.
I would agree.
So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. All right. Next. Can some soulmate connections be temporary, or is it OSAS? Once soulmates, always soulmates. Cripps Glenn wrote this bit. It's still funny. I'll go first.
It is still funny.
Right? Can some soulmate connections be temporary, or is it OSAS? Once soulmates, always soulmates? I think if it's soulmate, it's soulmates.
It's built right into the name.
It's built right into the name. Once soulmates, always soulmates. Yeah, I don't think that it can be temporary. I think that connection that's temporary isn't necessarily a soulmate connection. It could be a really deep connection. I mean, it could be someone, I call it, I didn't come up with the name, but single serving friendships. People that you meet in airports, or people that, you meet at a restaurant in the middle of nowhere, or a diner, and you strike up a conversation, and they're fantastic. You're fantastic. And it just is amazing, this conversation that you have, and you never forget it. And you don't exchange phone numbers or emails, but you just have this experience with someone that you just never forget. That doesn't mean it's a soulmate necessarily. It just means it's a great connection. But I think that if you're labeling it a soulmate connection, if that's what it is, it's not temporary. It's something that, we talked last week about whether it's a decision or not, right? And I think for the most part, most of us think it's not a decision. It's something intangible that happens. You're not deciding, hey, oh yeah, you're going to be my soulmate. It's not cable guy. Only some people will get that, but it's not like the relationship in Cable Guy. That's more limerence, at least to one person in that relationship. It's limerence to the other person. It might be a soulmate, to death. It might be to the death soulmate. Not a healthy relationship in the movie, for sure. But it depends on who you ask. But I think it's not temporary. What do you say, Jen? You want to go next on this one? Can a soulmate connection be temporary?
I don't think so. I think, again, it's built in the name. Even if whether it's, like friends or a romantic relationship, if there's a parting of ways, whether it's death or distance, I think it's still there, and I think it's eternal.
I agree. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
What do you say, Marisa?
Either you are or you're not.
Right.
And time and space doesn't change that. You are or you're not. You either have that same resonance with someone or you don't. And I don't think time going by changes that. I don't think distance has any control over it. It just is something that is.
Right. So kind of like once saved, always saved then.
Like I said, either you are or you're not. That's how I see this.
That's right. I love it. All right.
Hey,
Glenn.
Okie had a good. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. What
Just a real quick. He said, "Can there be soulmates that have never met in person?"
Yeah.
I think so.
Absolutely.
But I do want to hear Glenn's answer.
I think Glenn's answered that 5,000 times, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Oh, it can be temporary.
No, yes, you can have a soulmate that you've never met in person.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. I agree with that. I agree that the fact that someone's a soulmate isn't doesn't have anything to do with whether you meet that person or not. I would hope that you would. I would hope that the universe or God or whatever would direct the two of you to meet each other, but doesn't necessarily mean that you will. It's a big world, whether round or flat. It's a big world. We can all agree on that. Oh, that rhymed. Wow. Okay.
Writing it.
Yeah. What do you think, Glenn? Can as far as the question is concerned, can the soulmate connection be temporary, or is it once soulmates, always soulmates? What do you say to that one?
OSS.
All right.
Once soulmates,
OSA.
always soulmates.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Moving forward then, to those who have experienced. Wait, Marisa, you answered, right?
Yes, I
Okay.
did.
Just making sure. Okay. To those who have experienced such connection, did it change your life in any way? I'll be happy to go first on this. Yes, absolutely. Soulmate connections do change your life. I can think of a couple friends I would consider soulmates, but definitely Jen. I keep using that for an example because it is the relationship by which I compare all relationships. Whether I should or shouldn't do that, I can't seem to be able to help it. In fact, now that I've met someone that I think loves me completely for who I am and doesn't try to change me or manipulate me or use me in any way, that's kind of what I expect now from any relationships, even though cognitively I know it's not possible. No, that's not the right way to say it. I can't put that on every relationship. I mean, I can decide who I want to have a relationship with. What I'm saying is I can't make everyone treat me like that. Then I would be manipulating them. But I can choose what kind of relationship I want to put my time, invest my time and attention on. And now that I have this relationship that I haven't had with anyone else, that's kind of the way I look at it now. So if I'm going to meet someone new, I'm going to be asking myself the question, is this person, and I may not know right away, but the minute I see that I'm in a relationship with someone that is trying to manipulate me or suck my energy, things like that, and not giving anything in return, it's a one-sided vampiric relationship, then I'm going to walk away from it. I just don't have to put up with that anymore. And I had to experience that before I realized that that was a decision I wanted to make. So it has changed my life. A handful of friendships, a handful of friendships. There are a couple family members that I would say I have that kind of connection with. I have a few cousins that I'm really close to that I would say is that kind of connection. It changes your life. I don't know how it couldn't. If you're paying attention, these kinds of connections are, as we said earlier, greater than the standard. It has something extra, even if you can't define what the extra is. It is something extra. So yes, changes your life. Let's go with Marisa this time first. To those who have experienced such connection, did it change your life in any way?
Absolutely. I would have been in a great world of hurt. Again, referring back to my relationship with best friend Bobby. If she hadn't been there for me in all the ways and times that she hadn't been, things would have gone a lot worse than what they did. It can also change your life when you think you meet your soulmate and that's not who they are. Right. So I think it's, when you're willing to open up your life to somebody and take that chance, that in and of itself is the gateway for a life-changing event, whether they're real or not, because there will be consequences either way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Marisa. Glenn, what do you say? Soulmate connections, did it change your life in any way?
That would have to be the smile of the year.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But if I had been very good at imagination, I could not have even comprehended what happened
Right?
and how profound all of this turned out.
Yeah.
It was way outside my reference frame. Not a chance. But I can guarantee it. Profound. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Jen, what do you say? Do you agree with what Glenn and Marisa and I have said? No pressure.
Ask the question again.
Did it change your life? The soulmate connection, if you've experienced this in any way, this connection that we're talking about, did it change your life in any way?
In every way.
Every way.
Every way. For me, like you guys have had some soulmate connections with a couple of people, but with you, it was so drastic in my shift of reality, even spirituality in every way,
Yeah.
that knowing you every day, it makes me sit in absolute awe of God and how much he loves us, not just you and I, but just people.
People, yeah.
And so that is life altering.
Yeah.
There is an awe and a gratefulness to God. I had it before, but because of my whole situation and how the trajectory of my life has shifted so drastically in many, many ways from meeting you and Glenn and then you and I dating and then getting married, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it changed everything.
Yeah.
In just lovely ways.
Yep. Fantastic.
Caused some trouble in some ways too.
Well, yeah. I mean, it causes trouble for other people in families and other relationships that we have that are not real. And they, it's like we were talking earlier, the way that people from the outside look at the relationship and judge it, because it doesn't fall into it really doesn't, Jen. It doesn't fall into the
it's like a regular category.
It doesn't. It
No.
doesn't. And even we were talking about earlier, Jen and I, it's not like we're oblivious that to the outside eye, this looks like a patterned relationship. We know it doesn't. I mean, even the way we met, it doesn't match up with
unorthodox.
how it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
We get that. And we're graceful towards other people that don't understand in that way.
Yeah.
But it's when they're trying to force us into their mold of what they think we should have. And I'm literally talking about, jobs and benefits and what church we go to. These are things that other people consider important. I'm not saying they're not important, but this relationship doesn't fit some mold that you can find at the Target.
No, but I will say this too, that the stuff it stirred up, even that has made me address some things, my stuff in my life and all kinds of different layers, and even my relationship with God that I think needed to happen.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's really difficult. It's lonely sometimes, but I think it needed to happen.
Yeah.
So even in that's just another way it's connected. It's just amazing to me.
I would agree. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone answered that one. Moving forward, to evoke questions, some extracts from above are restated. Listener says, I mean, that lady in the article. So the listener's referring to the one that we read last week. As a reminder, it was the lady that went on they were, from what I remember, she went somewhere with her husband to some conference that he was involved in. And while there, they were supposedly there to work on their marriage connection while he was, it seems like a poor decision to do it that way, but it is what it is. And she met some dude and they had this amazing connection. And then she ended up leaving the marriage. And then the relationship with the person didn't materialize. So that's the lady in the article for those that didn't hear last week's show. broadcast. She may have had that same connection with her husband, but became numb to it and forgot it really happened. Then this new dude came along and sparkled and revived, and she had just forgotten her spark she had with her husband. So out of that, the first question is, what do you think of this comment? What do you think of that comment? To evoke questions. What do I think? I mean, that lady in the article. So that's the comment we're commenting on. I mean, that lady in the article, she may have had the same connection with her husband, but became numb to it and forgot it really happened. Then this new dude came along and sparkled and revived, and she had just forgotten her spark she had with her husband. What do you think of that comment? Okay, so I'll go first. I mean, it's possible. Now, as we've answered some of the other questions, it's difficult for me to go back on the way I've answered the questions. I'm saying to the idea, can some soulmate connections be temporary? We're saying OSAS, one soulmate, always soulmate. And the question above that was, if a connection breaks between declared soulmates, do you believe the connection was just an illusion? And I said no. So the way I have to answer this question based on being is that it wasn't a soulmate connection to begin with the husband. So just based on what I know, that the husband and the wife, the initial partnership, they weren't soulmates. I don't think that you would leave a soulmate like that. It's just my opinion. You wouldn't need to find another person to be with if it was a soulmate connection. So the listener is saying, well, maybe they had the same connection with the husband. Maybe she had the same connection, but she got numb to it. She forgot it really happened. Now, it's difficult for me to answer this because I could never forget the connection I have with Jen. It is impossible. If something, God forbid, were to happen and Jen left, I wouldn't be able to forget her. She's ruined me for other relationships. I know that this is a once in a lifetime thing. I'm sure Glenn might disagree with that, and that's okay. I don't think that these are dollar store items, these connections that you have with people that you could just find anywhere. Now, Glenn's lucky to have had it twice in his life. So is it impossible? No, but I just don't think it's likely. I think that it's very rare. I think if you meet one person, I've said this to Jen recently, if you meet one person, one that treats you like this, that loves you for who you are, doesn't nag you, try to change you, doesn't manipulate you, is honest and transparent with you, treats you with integrity and kindness and love and all the fruits of the Spirit, that you should consider yourself the luckiest man/woman in the world. And that's not a transgender comment. Man or woman. Because it doesn't grow on these relationships don't go on trees, and they're not common. That's my perspective. So I just don't think that it was a soulmate relationship. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. Anyone have a burning desire to answer this one? What do you think about this comment? Anyone want to raise their hand?
I'll raise my hand.
Go ahead, Glenn.
I don't think you can become numb to soulmate connections. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me.
Right.
I think you can definitely have it with 1, 2, 3, as many people, and in as many different circumstances as there can be. But you never get numb to any of those.
Right.
Regardless.
Right.
So I don't think she had it. Thanks.
Right. Thank you, Glenn. Believe just posted, I disagree with Jason. We are fallible people, can falter if they don't keep the gratitude Jason just mentioned. Well, Believe, as you know, I welcome disagreement. I said that I could be wrong for sure, and I could be. I have, God, life, things I've been through. I'm not a person that thinks they're right on everything. I have made, you're right, we're flawed people, we make mistakes. So by your comment, Believe, you're saying that the person we're talking about, they could have just made a mistake. And yeah, I mean, they could have made a mistake, but I can't answer any different way. So I'm sticking with my answer. And I do appreciate you disagreeing. You know, you have your opinion, I have my opinion, and the beautiful thing about it is we can have different opinions on the same topic, and it doesn't change a darn thing. And I'm so glad that we're in that place. Anybody that disagrees with me or any other of the panel members, we welcome that. So thank you for your comment. What do you think, Jen? Based on the article, what do you think of that comment? Do you think that it's possible that the woman they had a soulmate connection and she just got numb to it, or she forgot it really happened, and then she met this dude and then she's like, wow, he's sparkly, and he revives this feeling in her, and they get together and she just forgot the spark that she had with her husband. What do you say?
I think this might have been my comment because it sounds familiar. I think I wrote it. And when I was writing the comment, I was thinking not so much of her thinking that her husband was her soulmate, but just in general, you know, if there's stuff going on in the marriage and there's distance and disconnection, seeing someone that you do have a connection with, because I read a little bit of one of her interviews, and I think they had known each other before, the guy that she was wanting to leave the husband for. Okay. But part of me wondered if they did have a connection, maybe not soulmate, maybe could have been. But because of the neglect from her marriage and the distance and the disconnection, and maybe it was even stronger, maybe the connection was even stronger than what she had even originally with her husband, that was what created the wanting to leave, not work on the marriage and leave and pursue this other gentleman. But in the case, if they were soulmates, I don't think she could have been soulmates with her husband and just walk away like that because there was a connection with somebody else. I don't think that's possible.
Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that, because it puts a little different spin on it. So it's funny like that. So if you switch who the subject of this comment is, so if it's, I mean, that lady in the article, she may have had the same connection with the other guy, but she forgot it ever happened. Like if they had met before, like Jen's saying, it's a possibility that they had met before, and then she ran into him again, and it sparked it back up. I don't know. Either way, let's ask Marisa what she thinks. If you need me to read the comment again, I'm happy to. But
please
what do you? Oh, sure. So to evoke questions, some extracts from above are restated. Listener says, I mean, that lady in the article, she may have had that same connection with her husband, meaning the soulmate connection, but became numb to it and forgot it really happened. Then this new dude came along and sparkled and revived, and she had just forgotten her spark she had with her husband. What do you think of this comment?
I think that, again, we don't have enough information about this woman and her marriage and the encounter she had with the gentleman. All I can say is that I believe she was unhappy. I don't know if she had a soulmate connection with her husband or not. But just because you can have that soulmate connection doesn't mean that they're going to behave like a perfect, well-adjusted human being every moment of the day. They can have problems and issues too. They can walk away. They can still create problems for themselves, for you. They're still imperfect humans. Right. And just because you have that kind of resonance with someone doesn't mean you're supposed to be with them or be with them for a very long time.
Right.
I think you're just I think what is meant by encountering somebody that you resonate with in that way is to just pay attention and to learn what you can and to get what good you can out of your experience in the time that you know them.
Yeah.
But I think it's incorrect to assume that just because you connect with someone in that way, in a positive way, that it's always going to be that way. You don't know how long you got. You don't know how long it's going to last. Anything can change. Anything can happen.
Yeah. This stuff is so interesting because it is based on your own personal, your perception. We all, on some of the questions, we answer similarly, but on other ones, it's based on our own perspective, based on what we understand to be what relationships should be and what the reality of them are. It's just interesting to me. Thank you, Marisa. While I have you up here, answer the next question. It might be a quick answer, Marisa, but do you feel
Okay.
soulmate connections are open to being with more than one person?
I believe there are more than one person. There's more than one person out there that you can connect with in that way.
I
That you
agree.
can have that depth of connection. Like I used my example of my best friend Bobby.
Right.
But again, that doesn't mean that you're supposed to spend every moment of your life with that person. That doesn't even mean you're
Right.
going to be around that person or they're going to be around you
Right.
for
Or
the rest of
God
your life.
forbid something happen, something
Right.
horrible happened to separate the two of you. It doesn't
Right.
sever the connection.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, I think there are many out there, and some we are blessed to encounter, and some we, for whatever decisions we make, we don't get to meet. It's just choices we make.
Right.
And I believe God puts people in our path for a reason. The good ones, the bad ones, to learn, to grow.
Yep.
And that's what they're. When we run into those people, I think they're extra special. Either we're supposed to get something good from them, or be careful and not fall into something we might want to do, but maybe we shouldn't do. But still love them and appreciate them anyway. But
Right.
just be careful.
Sure.
Just be careful. Just
Let
because it looks good and feels good doesn't mean you should be there doing that, right?
Yeah.
Right. I've
Yeah.
been there.
let it be marked on the ledger that Marisa is saying to everyone, be careful. Okay?
Just be careful. Oh my goodness.
What do you think, Jen? Do you feel soulmate connections are open to being with more than one person?
I think so.
Sure.
Especially because we believe that it could be a romantic or a friendship.
Right.
Maybe even siblings. Who knows?
Sure.
That particular connection. I don't think it knows the bounds of relationship status.
Right. Agreed. How about you, Glenn? Do you feel soulmate? This isn't a throwaway question. It's just not one. I don't think anyone's going to expound on this one. It's pretty simple. Do you feel soulmate connections are open to being with more than one person?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
I think, and I don't think any like Nez's scenario with Bobby has any less relevance or importance or value, whatever word you want to put. I think they're all equal. Just because it's romantic doesn't mean it's better or than any of these other relationships. I think they're all very powerful.
Sure.
And I think they're all wonderful.
Right. Well, I agree with all of you. I think it can be with more than one person, as Glenn just stated, as Marisa stated, Jen stated. I agree. Next part. Listener also says, I feel like in all truth that any divine connection would always include God. I feel like in all truth that any divine connection would always include God. So the question based on that comment first is, do you consider soulmate connections are exclusively divine connections, meaning that God always forms an integral part of such connections? And we'll start with Jen. We're digging deep in the brain of yours, Jen. Is it exclusively? Now, here again, we have eternal quantifiers. One is exclusively, and also always. Exclusively and always. Divine connections. Does God always form an integral part of such connections? Are these connections exclusively divine connections? What do you say?
I think so. Because me personally, I believe that God created everything.
Yeah.
I even think he created the dynamics of having any connection with anybody, but especially something that's that special and that deep and I just think, it definitely, whether it's believer, non-believer, I think he's in it 100%.
Wonderful. Okay. Marisa, what do you say?
Repeat the question, please.
Sure. Do you consider soulmate? So it's based on the statement. Listener also says, I feel like in all truth that any divine connection would always include God. So that's the first statement. So the question out of that is, do you consider soulmate connections are exclusively divine connections, meaning that God always forms an integral part of such connections? Is God always a part?
As a Christian believer, I believe that God made each and every one of us. And I believe that when we encounter someone that we resonate with as a soulmate, I think part of that is due to the fact of, Scripture tells us that not only did God make us, but He knew us before we were in our mother's womb. That means in their spirit form, we were together with God before all things. And sometimes I think the soulmate thing comes into play when I think you can recognize your soul. Your soul recognizes another soul from that time. I believe that happens. I really, really do. That other person may or may not recognize you, but you can recognize them.
Interesting.
And I just got off track here. What was the rest of the question?
No. Are they exclusively divine connections, meaning that God always forms an integral part?
Yeah. So coming from the way I believe, God certainly has a reason for everything.
Yeah.
Everyone you encounter in this life, everywhere you go, there's a reason for it, and there's something that you can do to help further along your life story, your true life story. There's a reason for you going through everything that you do in life.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think that can be separated as seen as extraneous from God. God certainly is in control, and He's, I don't believe in coincidences. I think God's right there in all of it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Marisa. I'll go next because I can't wait to hear from Glenn. I have an idea what he's going to say. So if I wait till he answers, then the way I answer, everybody can say I got it from Glenn. Okay. So because of my belief, this is going to be weird for some people, I'm sure, but because of my beliefs, I do agree with what Marisa said. I agree also with the listener, because the listener is implying that it includes God. They're saying, I feel like in all truth, any divine connection would always include God. Now, I would say that God, as we know him, or some people, it might be a her, but whatever your concept of God is, or if you think it's the universe, whatever you name it, I do believe it's a divine connection, however you perceive it. I'll go a step further and say, even if you don't believe in God, that doesn't change that whatever brought this person into your life was not, as Marisa said, a coincidence. There is something more to it than other relationships. I don't see any other way to see it. So it is a divine connection, in my opinion, regardless of whether I believe it's God or universe or Shiva or any other, to me, fake gods or lesser gods, whatever it is, whatever the connection is that you decide to call it, it is a divine connection that brings this into play, and it does play an integral part in the relationship. So there's my answer. Now, Glenn, you can answer however you want. Just if I'm right about
only
the way
this once.
Only this once, right? Only this once, right? What do you say? Is it divine connection?
I say, you tell me what you think I'm going to say, please.
Sure. Yeah.
Since you've given me permission to answer, I mean, well, that's just so magnanimous of you. Thank you.
You know what I mean.
I'm going to say that Glenn's going to put the word cosmos or universe in place of God. That's what I'm going to say.
He's not.
We're always trying to guess what Glenn's going to say.
You're going to get a shock how I answer this one, but I'm going to give Cripps the chance. Go on, Cripps.
Well, based on the way you've answered before, I would say that you would answer that it doesn't necessarily have to be a divine connection. That you can have a soulmate connection. It doesn't have anything to do with something outside of you.
Wrong.
Okay, good. How dramatic you made that, Glenn. Just
I knew you were going to do that. And I thought, here's the chance. I don't get many of them. But no, not at all. I've got my God / Broncos cap ready to put on. Because the word divine connection was used, and I would actually agree with this if I put that hat on.
Okay.
And I would actually agree with it if I take the hat off.
Oh.
In a way, because I think there is something, I mightn't quite use the word divine, but I think there is something. I can use that. Yeah, I will use it. Yeah, I think they are. It is a divine connection. Where it came from is open to conjecture, but I do think so.
Well, so, there you go. I was wrong. Agree with it. I was wrong. Now, see, here's the difference between me and my perception of most people. I have no trouble admitting that I'm wrong. So I get a big pat on the back, and a big cupcake for that one. Oh my gosh!
You made me laugh anyway. That was good.
Good. I'm so glad. Yeah, I got it. That was a nice bit. That whole thing. That was really good. I like it. Okay, everyone answered this one, I think.
Yes, yep. And a quick hello to Quiet Listener. And if you enjoy Native American flute music, please go see Quiet Listener. I'm going to go put their link in the chat right now.
Yeah, please do. Thank you. Please and thank you. Yes. A Quiet Listener I met on, I believe it was one of Nez's broadcasts, and I just loved their site, and I happen to be a fan of flute music in general, but especially Native American flute sounds. And a quick little story about this. I loved cowboy movies when I was a kid growing up. And in some of those movies, you have that background music. The Big Bad and the Ugly is one of the ones that comes to mind. Did I name that right? Is that the right title? The Big Bad and the Ugly. It doesn't sound right, but it's a very popular Western.
The Good, Bad, and the Ugly?
Good, Bad.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good, Bad,
you said the Big Bad and the Ugly?
Big Bad and the Ugly are my trolls, but anyway.
The Big Bad, Big Baddie. Big Bad and the Ugly. Yeah, Good, Bad, and the Ugly. They have that special music in the background, and it is a flute that's making that sound. And there are other movies after that movie, I think. Maybe there are ones before. I haven't done a study or anything. But it's this background music that you don't hear as much anywhere else, and I grew up loving that. Anyway, I still do. So, yes, please go visit Quiet Listener's channel, which the link has been put in the chat. So thank you. Okay, so the next one is God accommodated differently in soulmate relationships than other relationships? Is God accommodated differently in soulmate relationships than other relationships? Let's start with Marisa on this one. So is God accommodated differently in a soulmate relationship over other relationships?
I'm not quite sure what's meant by that. Is God accommodated differently? I'm really not sure. Does that mean you go ahead, Glenn, turn me up.
Okay, I'll try to explain it if I can. Do you view the role of God in this in a soulmate relationship to be like of a much higher involvement on God's part than maybe a standard relationship? That's the best way I can try to.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, let me put that through my translator here. Okay, I'm getting that. Does that mean that there's more of a blessing or an anointing or God's presence?
Yeah, that's a fair way of putting it, I think. Good.
Then I would have to say yes. If someone's resonating with you and you with them in that special way, and it's genuine, it's the real genuine article.
Yeah.
Then certainly the hand of God is on that relationship for however long it lasts, even if you never get to meet each other, as long as you two are in contact.
Yeah.
I think there's something special extra given to those people from God. Absolutely. So
Okay.
I hope that answers the question. Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, you did good. Thank you. What about you, Jen? Is God accommodated differently in soulmate relationships than other relationships?
What does accommodated differently mean? Like
No,
worshipped or?
no. That's what Glenn was just explaining. Accommodated meaning a part of. Do you acknowledge God more? Is he more a part of, from my understanding, in a soulmate relationships as opposed to other relationships? It's an integral part. We kind of already answered this a little bit, but
a little bit. You know, I can only pull from my own experience, because when I think about how much God and I talk now, and how the awe that I have for him now and the gratefulness, I think part of that is due to being just starved and neglected and abused for so long. So going from that to this, it's a huge shift. It's very different. But if I were to take that out, just the very fact that the connection you and I have exists, despite, you know, what you and I went through before we met.
yeah.
For me, at least, it does put a different emphasis on God, everything to do with God. So I've experienced God in a completely different way than I did before. Like, I still was experiencing him, but there was a lot of rough stuff going on. So this was a gift, and it definitely did shift my relationship with God in a completely different and new way,
Right.
a deeper way.
Yeah.
So I would guess to say yes, but
Right.
that's only pulling from my own experience.
No, you answered that well. I understand what you're saying. So thank you,
Yeah.
Jen. I appreciate that. And Glenn, you're up last on this one. Is God accommodated, putting your Broncos hat on for this one, differently in soulmate relationships than other relationships?
No, I have to pass on this one. The Broncos / God cap didn't have enough power in it.
Perfect. Okay. You're excused on this one then, Glenn. Okay. All right. Two more questions to finish up. My answer is to this one, yes. I think that God should be accommodated the same in every relationship, but it's only a soulmate relationship where you are around the person long enough to see that. Except in, the single serving friendships, I don't put God on and then turn him off. So I would say that it's in every relationship, but it is different. That's not the question. Wasn't does it exist in both soulmate relationships and other? It's saying, is it differently? Is God accommodated differently? Yes. And from my perspective, it would just be the amount of time that you spend around the person. It would be different between a soulmate relationship and then other relationships. All right, two more questions. This one I think is pretty straightforward. It's a long question, but it could be a short answer. Now to the situation between a believer and a non-believer. Believer and a non-believer. Can these two people be authentic soulmates even though they don't live as partners in the world? To take this further, do believers consider a soulmate connection to be yoking? And I'll go first on this one. It'll be really, really short. The first part, can these two people be authentic soulmates even though they don't live as partners in the world? We've kind of already answered this in a way. Yes, absolutely. You don't have to be living with the person in order to have an authentic soulmate connection. It may not even be romantic, as we've pointed out. It could be a friendship. It could be just a person that you meet that for whatever reason you feel a deeper connection to them, and you're not partners in the world. It doesn't work like that. And then the second part, to take this further, do believers consider a soulmate connection to be yoking? To me, yoking simply means that you've tied yourself to a person. It could be in business. That particular verse, though, is about marriage. It's about don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. That means, to me, it means don't marry someone that doesn't share your beliefs. And we've talked about this on the broadcast before. Nobody has to agree on that, but biblically speaking, that's what it's saying. It's not saying the other person's horrible or whatever, but this is a different question. So we're mixing the idea of yoking into a question between a non-believer. Can these two people be authentic? Of course they can be authentic soulmates. Doesn't mean that they're going to decide to be yoked. So both things can exist at the same time. What do you think, Jen? First, can these two people be authentic soulmates, a non-believer and a believer, if they're not partners in the world? And second part, to take this further, do believers consider a soulmate connection to be yoking?
All right. First question, I think yes. I don't necessarily understand it, but there's a part of my brain that kind of does. If that doesn't confuse you, I'm so sorry.
No.
Part of it is because I do trust Glenn, and I trust based on the things he shared about your mom, Linda, and just how moved he is whenever he talks about her and has shared stuff with us in the past. There is obviously something there. It's very evident. And, they weren't on the same page as believers. But I trust him, and I trust that there was a connection, from Linda's writings and some of her recordings and what Glenn has shared.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do think that's possible. And what was the second question?
The relationship, do you consider it yoking? To take this further, do believers consider a soulmate connection to be yoking?
I think in a sense, yes. But yoking to me means kind of aligning yourself with someone. Now that could be friendship, it could be marriage, it could be business. I think you can get into a bad, but be unevenly yoked, even like in a business partnership.
Sure.
So that's my answer.
Okay. All right. What do you say, Marisa?
Ask the question again, please.
Okay, so we're talking about a believer and a non-believer. The first part is, can these two people, believer and non-believer, be authentic soulmates even though they don't live as partners in the world? We'll go one at a time. I'll ask that question, then I'll ask you the second part.
And I'll translate that into, can you have that special resonance, that connection with someone who doesn't believe the same as you? I think you can.
Yeah.
I think there can be many differences. And I think that can be possible. And I think that if those differences are there, I think that's a big red flag warning that you may resonate with this person on this level about these things, but there are still these other things that are very important to your life decisions in the direction you want to go in. And when you've got two distinctly different believing people, especially religiously, they're going on two different paths. There's just no other way to see that. And scripture, I believe, is very correct when it says, don't yoke yourself with an unbeliever.
Right.
So you may have that resonance with somebody on that level.
Sure.
That's very wonderful. Doesn't mean you're supposed to be with them.
Right.
That doesn't mean you're supposed to yoke up with them, whether that's marriage or, like you said, business or what have you.
Right. Okay.
So.
Well, you answered
and
both
the
questions.
other part. Oh, did I?
Well,
okay, good. Whew.
You answered it. It's do believers consider a soulmate connection to be yoking?
I would say so. I would say so. I mean, you're either linking up with somebody in friendship or romantically or sexually, or you're not.
Right.
You can't be kind of pregnant. You either are or you're not. So.
Right. Right.
One or the other.
Glenn, what do you say?
I say it has me intrigued in relation to the answer to the question, is God accommodated differently? Because I correct me if I'm wrong, I got the impression that you sort of are saying that the involvement of God, for want of a better word, is greater, or maybe the blessing's greater, or whatever it was, but there was a difference in how God is perceived in soulmate relationships because of the connection, etc., etc.
Sure.
Yeah. So, look, this one's I think obviously I'm going to say yes here.
Right. Yeah.
But I wonder, I do wonder Yeah, I'm a bit. I don't know. This is a very interesting question,
I agree.
and I didn't put it in here deliberately so I could answer it either, because I think it's a way more difficult question than meets the eye, because you can like connect as soulmates, but then what happens?
Right.
Is it sort of a fait accompli that you're going to be soulmates, but and you are going to be at a distance in life, so to speak? I don't know. I
Right.
don't know.
Does the difference in belief prevent you from having a complete and total authentic soulmate connection or not?
Absolutely not.
Right. Right.
And I don't think in many. But once again, I can only say that in my case, that was not even part of any discussion.
Yeah.
In other words, the declaration of soulmates came way before the declaration, "Hey, you're not a Christian."
Right. Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
wasn't backwards. It
Right.
wasn't like, "Oh, you're not a Christian, but we're still soulmates." No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't
Right.
playing one against the other.
Yeah, I agree.
Two discrete things. Yeah.
I don't think it has to do with anything. In fact, I'll go further than that and say, I'm not saying, Glenn, that you and I are soulmates, but what I will say is that there was a purpose for us meeting and continuing on a relationship. We could have just met when my mom died and had a little conversation and not have gone anywhere, but it did go somewhere. And because of that, you helped Jen. Because of my relationship with you, you met Jen, you helped Jen, and we've helped, in my opinion, a lot of people by meeting people and talking to them, and affected other people's lives when it could have led nowhere. So, because I don't believe in coincidences, there's a purpose. Whether you believe in God or not is irrelevant. It happened. It is happening. So I can look at it as God is involved in that, and you can say, no, he's not. I mean, I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but our opinions can be different, but it doesn't change the fact that there is an authentic relationship happening. So the way we view God or don't view God, as the case may be, doesn't have anything to do with the connection itself.
I think that's a very fair comment. I agree with it.
Okay. Thank you. Lastly, do you believe that this connection, to take this further, do believers consider a soulmate connection to be yoking? I mean, I don't know how you would answer that, not being a believer.
That's the hat's not powerful enough for this one either.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Finally, a listener says, maybe it's unresolved conflict in my mind about interrelating with a few people in the past, and that is affecting my reaching a sober conclusion to the potential of it all, this concept of soulmate. Then there we have it. As we have intimated so many times on TSL, the choice is either to be open to possibility or stay in the cupboard. And then lastly, a quote, love is an art, an expression of the divine, to which Jesus is a clear image of, unknown. So the listener, I'll just say, we all get conflicted in our minds at one point. I'm speaking for myself. I've been conflicted about various things in my mind over time. And I find the older I get, the less conflicted I get. And it's not that things aren't conflicting or difficult. It's that I've changed the way that I view things, and I'm not so dogmatic as I used to be. And that has made life a lot easier for me. There are some things I am dogmatic about, but even those things I hold loosely, just because I've learned lessons. And I have been a person that I've learned that holding loosely to things and realizing that I don't know the answers to everything, that has been proved to me. Life has proved that to me, or God, if you will, has shown me that I don't know everything. And once I accepted that, I even think you can't know everything in this realm. You can't know everything because the truth isn't being presented. And even if the truth were presented, I believe there are people that would see it, that would hear it, that would touch it, and they still wouldn't believe it. So it's difficult for me to say that I don't understand why you would have any conflict or anything that feels unresolved. I definitely understand how this can affect any person, and even the concept of a soulmate. I mean, we have tried to, in 2 broadcasts, tried to address this idea of soulmate, and I don't think we're any closer to determining whether it's a real thing or not. How do we know? I mean, we might know the creator in the ways that we do, but until there's a definitive answer from them as to whether they created souls to be mates, or if it's that by some spark, some deeper connection that we have with the person, that is what decides whether we're a soulmate or not, and it has nothing to do with us. It's not a decision we make. It either is or it isn't, as I believe Marisa was saying. It's either a connection or it's not. So we don't have any control over that. What we do have a control over is whether we pursue that relationship or not. We do have control over that. All right. So that's all the questions for tonight, guys. And that is the write-up for tonight. This has been a really good conversation, in my opinion. Lots of good questions to answer. We went a little over, but I think most people won't mind that. If you're listening to playback, thank you for listening. If you enjoy these types of conversations, do us a favor, put a like on there, a little thumbs up if you have the time to do that. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Most of all, if you would tell people about our little channel over here and get the link to them, share the link if you would. And if you have any comments, if you like or dislike some of the things that we have said, just keep in mind, as Jen said at the beginning, we are not medical professionals. We are simply having conversations, and we hope that it benefits you in some way. But as at the end of every broadcast, you should listen to what's being said, and you make a determination for yourself. We're not trying to tell anyone how they should view certain topics. We're definitely not trying to manipulate or control. These are just conversations. All right. So I will say goodnight first. Thank you for being here. We'll be back again next week. Same time, same place, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we hope everyone has a good week. And thank you for joining. And then I'll pass it over to Glenn to say goodnight. We lost Jen for some reason, and she's not here right now. But Glenn, if you could take a minute and say goodbye to everybody. If you have any closing comments about the topic or anything else, please share them.
Sure. I'll just say goodnight. Actually, yeah, I thought this went well. It's great to hear like different range of experiences from different people,
right,
on here and in the chat. I think it's important to get as wide a perspective as we can. All I'll close with, I think if any person has been fortunate enough to have such a profound experience, it doesn't matter whether it's God, the universe, or whatever. But the bottom line is no person or nobody in this world can take it away from you if you've had it.
Wow. So, beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Jen, are you back? The reason I'm asking, oh, there it is. There's her icon. You want to say goodbye to everybody, Jen? I think she's having some problems, having some issues. Okay, I'll say goodnight for Jen. Sorry about that. I think there's something with the connection, or maybe my phone died. I don't know. I think it was plugged in, but you're unmuted, Jen. You want to try one more time? No, we're just not hearing her. Sorry about that, guys. So Jen says goodnight in her usual sing-song lovely way. Hope everyone has a good week and enjoy the rest of your Sunday night, unless you're in another country, which it might be Monday, like it is for Glenn, I think, Monday. All right. Marisa, if you could, if you have any closing comments. Oh, here she's trying again. Let's try one more time.
Hey, guys.
There you are. Okay.
Oh, there's 2 of me.
Yeah, the other one will drop off in a minute. Yeah, take a minute to say goodbye. If you have any closing comments about the topic, Jen, please give them.
Great topic and wonderful questions. Very thought-provoking, kind of mind-altering. Not altering, but you know what I mean. Very, very great write up. I really appreciate the listener, our chat listener, for writing something up and sharing their thoughts and questions. Fantastic questions. And this was really enjoyable. I really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming out, everyone, our family in the chat. And we cannot wait to see you next week. If y'all have any prayer requests, shoot them in the chat, please. And we would love to lift you up in prayer.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Jen. Appreciate that. All right. Last but certainly not least, Marissa's going to close us down. So if you have any closing comments, Marissa, about the topic or anything else, please make them. And let's close it down for us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Glenn, and to the viewer who submitted their ideas and thoughts on this topic. What a beautiful write-up. Another wonderful discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody who came, and to everybody who watches the replay. Please do share it out on your social media if you are inclined to do so. Please and thank you. Yeah, none of us know much of anything, do we? But I can certainly say in my life, I've experienced relationships with people where it was beyond the everyday friendship or acquaintance. I personally have experienced that connection, and I believe everybody on this panel has too. So I don't know if everybody gets to meet people like that. I want to believe that we do, but none of us, all of us, are meant to encounter certain people. Maybe some of us walk a more solitary path. I don't know. All I can say is, like Glenn says, at least get out there and live. Be open to the possibility. But at the same time, like I was yelling at everybody, please be careful. Please use your discernment. Like I said, going with the water is wonderful, but sometimes there's obstacles and rocks and things in that water. Sometimes there's a waterfall. Please do exercise caution. But thanks again, everybody, for being here. And I cannot wait until next Sunday, where we'll all come back for another wonderful discussion. Love to Preliminal and Conspiracy Realist Mom. Thank you guys for coming in. I love you. Preliminal just did an upload, some beautiful art and music, and I hope you get to check it out on his channel. And Scully's House of Thrillers just went live. He's reading Anne Frank. If you want to hear Scully, the author, who reads to you, well, then go on over to see Scully, which is what I'm going to do right now. Thank you so much. God bless you. And yes, I'm happy to take prayer requests too. My email is in the description of my content. So thank you so much. And God willing, we'll see you all next Sunday here on True Story Live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. God bless. Good night.